One of the biggest mistakes that I made for the duration of my training career was always trying to stay too much in that coveted hypertrophy zone. Back in the day was always like 8 to 12 repetitions, or for me, I always thought 10 repetitions was the perfect amount of repetitions to be doing for stimulating muscle growth. For the longest time, it was well understood that if you go on one end of the spectrum, that's more for strength because the resistance is really high. And while you can make the muscle work really hard, it doesn't have a lot of capacity to have a lot of repetitions and volume. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you've got a lot of volume, but it's coming at the sacrifice of intensity. So therefore, this middle ground seems to make the most sense, and why most of the research at that time was suggesting that this may be one of the best areas. But it's that progression and growth that I was missing out on, because by thinking, okay, I've got to stay with 10 repetitions, I was never lifting anything heavier and going with more intensity, so my intensity wasn't growing. And I also was terrified that if I did even as much as 12 reps, now I'm on the endurance side of things, I'm building endurance, there's no way I'll build muscle, believing it was this very narrow sweet spot I had to stay in, and consequently never made much progress. But thankfully now, a lot of the research suggests that this coveted little hypertrophy zone is a hell of a lot bigger than we thought it was. We can potentially build muscle and create a stimulus for hypertrophy anywhere even closer to the strength phase, like 6, 7, 8 repetitions, all the way up, maybe even as much as 20 or even 30 repetitions. We don't want to try to stay in a certain ideal optimal position, but instead use exercise methods that make as much range as possible. So in grind style calisthenics, we have our strength phase, keep those repetitions really low and the resistance really, really high. So 3 repetitions, maybe 5, and that way you have a much greater chance of increasing that tension or the strength of the muscle. And then of course in our finisher phase, we have this end of the spectrum. 10, 15, 20, really push the red zone, that endurance of the muscle, so that ability to endure and have stamina in the muscle could potentially increase. So by kind of bookending our approach, we have a greater chance of increasing both, therefore leveling up the entire work capacity as a whole, and potentially creating much more of a stimulus for hypertrophy than if you just stayed in one narrow range. And you can do this a number of different ways. You can work on each end in the same workout, like in grind style calisthenics. You can alternate between each workout, each week, each month, a periodization plan. It really probably doesn't matter too much how you do it, as long as some of the times you're going heavier, some of the times you're going lighter and higher endurance, and mixing it up to expose your muscle as much as possible to both ends of the spectrum. I wish I knew this stuff a lot more back in the day, but better late than never, I guess. It is true what they say, that once you learn what you should be doing, physically you're past your prime. So hopefully this video can catch a few of you to bring some of that added benefit before it's too late. But if you have questions down below, check out my book, Grind Style Calisthenics, for how I do this in a comprehensive program. And thank you very much for watching. Be fit and live free.